They taught you to smile when you wanted to scream. They conditioned you to obey when your blood burned for rebellion. They raised you to react, not respond. But you're not a civilized man. You're an animal, draped in fabric and forced to perform. Beneath your forced calm lies rage, instinct, raw power. You flinch at loud words, lash out at insults, and dance like a puppet when they pull your strings. But that's not power. That's emotional slavery. And if you can be provoked, you can be controlled. Machiavelli once said, "The wise man does at once what the fool does finally." What did he mean? He meant that the mind is a weapon, and if it's not sharp, it's dangerous to the one holding it. In a world where outrage is currency and reaction is weakness, you must evolve. You must become cold, calculated, strategic. You must not react, you must respond. The one who responds holds the leash. The one who reacts wears the collar. This is Sig Rhythm. We're not here to make you feel better. We're here to make you untouchable. Comment this below if you're ready to dominate your emotions before they dominate you. I bend emotion to my will. Number 1. The law of cold reaction. Every man is born reactive. It's primal, it's animal, and most, they die that way, barking, snarling, triggered by shadows. But the ones who rise, the few who ascend, they follow a different law, the law of cold reaction. Understand this, the colder your reaction, the greater your power. That's not just a mindset, it's a weapon, because in the arena of power, the first man to lose his temper forfeits control, and control is everything. Look around, the world's full of emotional addicts, people triggered by tweets, collapsing over criticism, panicking at silence. They act like their emotions are sacred, but a real strategist, a Machiavellian mind, he sees emotion as a tool, not a truth. Anger doesn't rule him, fear doesn't steer him, approval doesn't own him. He uses emotion, but he is never used by it. The loudest man in the room is the weakest. That's not bravado, it's biology. The one who must shout is the one who's already lost the war of perception. The true player, the cold operator, is silent. He watches, he collects information, he lets others expose themselves, because when you react, you bleed information. But when you respond, you create mystery, and mystery is leverage. Cold reaction isn't about becoming numb. It's about becoming dangerously precise. You feel the emotion, you study it, you master it, you lock it in a vault, then you respond surgically. While others are slaves to their impulses, you become a tactician of timing. They think you're passive, but you're not passive, you're patient. You're waiting for the perfect moment to strike when they're blind, open, overextended. So let them try to provoke you, let them gossip, let them mock, let them push every button. When they rage, smile. When they beg for a reaction, give them silence. Because silence isn't weakness, it's power under pressure. It makes them uncomfortable. It forces them to fill the space, reveal their hand, break their frame. That's when you win. Not by reacting, but by watching them unravel themselves. Every time you choose not to react, you're building an invisible fortress. Every moment of silence is another layer of armor. You're no longer ruled by spikes of emotion. You're ruled by a higher logic, a darker discipline, a cold flame. And in that silence, in that calm, lies domination. Comment this below if you're stepping into the realm of icy clarity. My silence commands more than their noise ever will. Again, drop it in the comments so your enemies know you've changed. Number 2, the power of delay. Power doesn't come from speed, it comes from timing, and the man who delays controls the tempo of the battlefield. Understand this, the strategist always waits, not because he's weak, because he's watching, calculating, storing every move in silence while others waste their ammunition on impulse. The average man reacts like a match, instant spark, quick flame, then nothing. But the cold operator, he's a fuse, quiet, controlled, and when he ignites, it's with devastating precision. Machiavelli taught that appearances matter more than truth, and in delay, you build an image of calm dominance. People confuse patience with passivity. Let them. Because when they think you've done nothing, you've actually done everything. Studied them, mapped their weaknesses, predicted their next 3 moves. The delay isn't emptiness, it's coiled precision. A snake doesn't strike when it's angry, it strikes when the timing is perfect. Those who act too soon bleed control. They overextend. They reveal their strategy before the enemy has even shown his cards. But you wait. You withhold your power, and when you unleash it, it's surgical, deliberate, inevitable. Delay is psychological warfare. It creates discomfort in others. They get anxious, restless. They need your reaction to feel stable again. And when you deny it, they fall apart. Their panic becomes your control. Their impatience becomes your weapon. This is how power plays out in the shadows. Not with noise, not with panic, but with perfect, weaponized timing. Comment this below if you're done rushing into weakness. My patience is a loaded gun. Write it, own it, become it. Number 3, emotional detachment, the highest form of discipline. Emotional detachment isn't the absence of feeling, it's the mastery of it. It's when your emotions obey you, not the other way around. Most people are nothing but emotional puppets, crying when they're triggered, raging when they're provoked, chasing approval like addicts. But a cold, disciplined mind. He watches the chaos without stepping into it. He feels the fire but doesn't burn. He's not emotionless. He's untouchable. Understand this. Every system of control in history has used emotion as its leash. Guilt, fear, anger, shame, hope. These aren't feelings. They're weapons used against you. And if you respond to them blindly, you're not free. You're not rational. You're not powerful. You're just programmable. That's why the disciplined man trains himself to detach, because he knows the one who governs his emotional state, governs his fate. Machiavelli never trusted emotion. He exploited it in others, but buried it in himself. Because to lead, to manipulate, to win, you must rise above the emotional current. The common man feels his way through life. The powerful man thinks his way through it. His emotions are acknowledged, but never obeyed. When he's angry, he studies it. When he's hurt, he disguises it. When he's afraid, he sharpens it into alertness. This isn't suppression. This is conversion. You think strength is about domination? No, strength is about self-command. When you stop needing to be liked, you become immune to social pressure. When you stop fearing loss, you become immune to threats. When you stop craving love, you become immune to betrayal. This is the highest form of freedom, not walking away from emotion, but walking above it. Emotional detachment allows you to see things others can't. While they react from pain, you notice patterns. While they spiral in offense, you spot opportunity. While they defend themselves, you position yourself to strike. Not from emotion, but from advantage. And when people realize they can't get a rise out of you, when their insults echo off your armor, when your face reveals nothing, they begin to fear you, not because you're violent, but because you're unreadable, unpredictable, unbreakable. This is the kind of man they write about in whispers, the kind of man who doesn't flinch, who doesn't beg, who doesn't explain. He acts, he decides, he executes. The world bends around him because he doesn't bend to the world. If you're ready to kill emotional dependency and rise into cold power, comment this below. I feel everything, but serve nothing. Write it again. Carve it into your mind. That's your new discipline. Number 4, the power mirror. Reflect their weakness. Reveal nothing of yourself. Power isn't always about action. Sometimes it's about reflection. The most dangerous weapon in psychological warfare is not a threat, it's a mirror. Understand this, people fear themselves far more than they fear you. So give them a reflection, not a reaction. Make them see what they're hiding, their fear, their envy, their insecurity, and say nothing. When you reveal nothing of yourself, you force them to project everything onto you. They will try to pull information from you, subtly, desperately, but you must become unreadable, neutral, still, because the second you show emotion, you've given them a tool, an entry point, a target. But when you mirror them, calmly, without expression, they start to fold. They see themselves through you, and most people can't handle their own reflection. Machiavelli knew that manipulation thrives on disclosure. If they know your values, they'll weaponize them. If they know your fears, they'll trigger them. If they know your goals, they'll twist them. That's why the smart operator stays shadowed. He listens 10 times more than he speaks. He studies without revealing he's studying. He gathers without giving. And when confrontation comes, he doesn't fight, he mirrors. He lets the other person expose themselves, their flaws, their desperation, their motives, all uncovered by their own emotional momentum. You just hold the mirror, cold, clear, silent. And the irony, they'll mistake your calm for ignorance, your silence for weakness, until they realize you're not responding, you're reflecting. You're making them uncomfortable without lifting a finger. That's cold power. No threat, no aggression, just unshakable stillness. People crave attention. They beg for validation. They need confirmation of their existence. Deny them that, and watch how fast they unravel. You become a ghost with weight, a presence that reveals theirs without ever showing yours. That's psychological dominance. Comment this below if you're ready to master the mirror. I reflect their truth and reveal none of mine. Etch it in. Let them drown in their own exposure while you stay untouchable. Number 5. Never explain, never defend. The silence that terrifies. Powerful men don't explain themselves. They don't justify, defend, or beg to be understood, because every explanation is a crack in your armor. Every defense is a surrender of frame. Learn this now. The moment you feel compelled to explain, you've already lost psychological ground. The world doesn't respect those who overspeak. It obeys those who say little and mean everything. Most people are slaves to validation. The moment they're questioned, they panic. Someone doubts their decision, and they scramble to justify. Someone challenges their belief, and they stammer to defend. But this is not strength. This is emotional weakness disguised as logic. They think they're clearing their name. What they're really doing is bleeding power, one sentence at a time. Machiavelli understood this with brutal clarity. To him, appearances were more important than truth, and silence, true, commanding silence, was the weapon of kings. When a ruler defends himself too much, the people suspect he's hiding something. But when he says nothing, the people lean in. They wonder. They speculate. That speculation becomes mystique, and mystique is more powerful than any truth could ever be. Here's what you need to realize. Explaining is not communication. It's submission. It says, please don't misunderstand me. Here's what I really meant. Let me show you I'm right. All of this? It's weakness. It's an unconscious confession that someone else's perception has power over you, that you care more about being accepted than being in control. But the strategic mind? He doesn't explain. He executes. He doesn't argue. He acts. He doesn't react. He allows others to talk while he observes. Silence is terrifying, not because it's empty, but because it creates space. A space their mind rushes to fill. People expect noise. They're used to back and forth, retaliation, defensiveness. When none of that comes, it disrupts their internal rhythm. Their brain doesn't know what to do with your stillness. They replay your silence again and again, trying to decode what it meant. That tension, that unknown, that's where your power lives. You want to shake someone's frame? Say nothing. Be accused of something you don't respect, and stare at them. No defense, no anger, no apology, just presence. Because when you say nothing, they can't argue with you. They can't twist your words. They can't manipulate the conversation. All they're left with is their own reflection, and it eats at them. Now, here's the trick. You're not doing this to look cool. You're doing it because explanation is reactive, and reacting is for the weak. Defending is emotional, and emotion is leverage you give away. You're not here to be understood. You're here to be unshakable. Let people misunderstand you. Let them form theories. Let them talk. Let them gossip. And while they do, you stay quiet. You keep building, moving, dominating silently. Every moment they spend wondering where you stand is a moment you've already moved ahead. You become a psychological specter, there but unreadable, present but ungraspable. You become the black mirror they can't interpret, and in that confusion, in that void, lies control. This isn't about becoming mute. This is about choosing your words like weapons. Deliberate, sharp, rare. When you do speak, it cuts. When you don't, it suffocates. Because the man who controls his voice controls the room. They'll bait you. They'll try to trigger a response, an explanation, a defense. Don't give it to them. Because when you don't react the way they expect, you force them into uncertainty. And people fear uncertainty more than they fear conflict. Your silence becomes a psychological chokehold. And here's something deeper. Most people explain not to communicate, but to comfort their own ego. They're not speaking to clarify. They're speaking to be liked, to be validated, to smooth the discomfort of being misunderstood. But you embrace it. You wear misunderstanding like armor. Because the truth is this: the more powerful you become, the less understood you'll be. And that's exactly how it should be. Say less, mean more, reveal nothing. You don't explain your strategy to sheep. You don't defend your path to those who walk in circles. You don't respond to barking dogs. You move in silence, and when you strike, it's surgical. So here's your new commandment. I do not explain. I do not defend. I remain. Write it, comment it, repeat it until it rewires your instincts. Because from now on, your silence isn't absence. It's a presence so powerful, it bends reality. Number 6, the art of withholding. Control isn't always taken through force. Often it's maintained through deliberate absence. The most powerful move you can make is to withhold, not out of spite, but out of strategic awareness. Most people are addicted to feedback. They don't need answers. They need attention. They don't seek resolution. They seek reaction. And when you refuse to give it, when you go cold, still, distant, they begin to unravel. Their identity, their control, their perceived influence over you all begins to disintegrate because they realize you're no longer accessible. Withholding is a psychological chokehold. It isn't silence for the sake of being quiet. It's silence used as a weapon. When you deny someone the very thing they expect, your words, your validation, your approval, your explanation, you force them to confront their own emptiness. They'll push, poke, provoke, hoping to draw something from you. But when you give them nothing, you flip the dynamic. You make them chase, and nothing is more dominant than being the one who doesn't need to pursue. Powerful men don't overexpose. They don't overgive. Their attention is earned. Their words are rare. Their presence is felt even in absence. That's because they understand a brutal truth. Scarcity creates value. The more often you're seen, the less you're desired. The more you explain, the less you're respected. But when you withhold, when you control what you give, when you give it and how much, you generate hunger, the kind that makes people obsess over you, not because of who you are, but because of what they can't have. Machiavelli warned of becoming predictable. Predictability breeds vulnerability. If they know how you'll respond, they can use it. If they know how to trigger you, they can control you. But if you withhold, if you become unpredictable, you become a variable they can't control. And in power games, the man who is hard to read is the man who cannot be ruled. Even kindness must be used with discipline. Praise, affection, attention. These aren't default settings. They are tools, and tools are meant to be used, not wasted. Most people give too much of themselves too fast, hoping to win loyalty. But real loyalty is forged through selective access, through earned presence, through the discipline of restraint. You don't flood others with your energy. You let them sit in the dark a little. Make them miss your light. Withholding is the art of creating psychological oxygen. When you're around, they breathe easy. When you're gone, they suffocate. And when they realize they don't have control over your presence, they start to fear losing it. That fear becomes respect. And respect, when earned through absence, becomes power that lasts. This is not emotional cruelty. It's emotional maturity. You're not punishing them. You're training them. You're teaching the world that you are not free to access, that your energy is not unlimited, that your time, your focus, your emotional bandwidth are high-value assets and must be treated as such. When you withhold, you teach others to treasure what you give. You make your attention a reward, not a reflex. And yes, it will confuse people. It will frustrate them, especially those used to instant replies, constant validation, emotional availability. But that frustration is part of the reconditioning. You're not playing their game anymore. You're not feeding their need to control you through your own generosity. You've stepped back. You've become the ghost that haunts their expectations. Let them guess. Let them analyze your silences, your delays, your vanishing presence. What they call distance is actually discipline. What they call coldness is calculated clarity. You are not emotionally starved. You're emotionally fortified. You no longer seek to be understood. You seek to remain in command. In the beginning, they'll call it arrogance. Later, they'll call it gravity, because eventually they'll realize you never needed to speak loudly to be felt. You just needed to say less and mean more. And that's the key. Your value will no longer come from volume, but from scarcity. You become the man they think about when you're gone. You become the man who left them starving, not for love, not for attention, but for the part of you they could never fully reach. So don't explain why you left the conversation. Don't justify why you stopped responding. Don't chase. Don't overcorrect. Let your absence do the talking. Let your silence burn its own message into their psyche. That's the ultimate shift. When they realize your greatest impact wasn't what you gave, but what you refused to. From now on, speak less. Pull back. Hold the line. Because in a world screaming for attention, the one who withholds it becomes king. Comment this below if you're done bleeding energy into the wrong hands. I give nothing for free. My silence has weight. Let them feel it. Let them fear it. Let them earn it. Number 7. Frame domination. Control the lens. Control the world. Power is not always about force. It's not always about status or size or even money. Real power, cold, subtle, undeniable, lies in one thing: frame control. The ability to dominate the lens through which others see reality. Understand this: whoever controls the frame controls the truth, and the man who controls the truth controls the room. People don't respond to facts, they respond to frames. The facts don't matter if the frame controls how those facts are perceived. A man who understands frame doesn't argue, he redefines. He doesn't defend himself, he repositions the entire conversation. He makes others speak on his terms. That's why frame domination is the deepest level of psychological power. It doesn't force others to obey, it makes them believe. The average man walks into a room and adapts to it. He conforms to the mood, the energy, the opinions, the social hierarchy. His internal world bends to the external. That is weakness, that is prey behavior. But the strategic man, the cold operator, does the opposite. He brings his own gravity into every room. He shapes perception through presence, language, and silence. He establishes the lens and watches others unconsciously align with it. Frame isn't something you declare, it's something you project, through conviction, through calm, through detachment. When you speak with certainty, the world leans in. When you sit in stillness, the world adjusts around you. When you're unaffected, you dictate the emotional tone. Most people are reactive, but frame is proactive. It's the psychological terrain on which all social battles are fought, and the one who owns the terrain owns the fight. Machiavelli understood this deeply. He never told people what to think. He made them think it was their idea. That's frame. You implant a lens so subtly that others believe it's their own conclusion. No resistance, no pushback, just quiet submission to your narrative. You never argue for the frame. You act as if it's already the accepted truth. That's where most men fail. They try to convince, to persuade. But persuasion is the tool of the subordinate. Frame is the weapon of the ruler. Let me make this clear. The strongest frame always wins. It doesn't matter who's right. It matters who speaks from a place of non-negotiable belief. The man who is unwavering in his interpretation, calm, composed, and immune to outside emotional sway, becomes the authority by default. His reality becomes the dominant one. The others adapt without even realizing they've been conquered. This isn't manipulation. This is mental warfare. And in warfare, your frame must be airtight. You must know what you believe and why, and be prepared to stand on it alone. That is the mark of power, the willingness to stand in a room full of opposition and remain unmoved. Because when you refuse to break, others begin to bend. They question themselves, they question the group, they question their own perception, all because you wouldn't flinch. Frame domination is built in the subtle. The way you enter a room, the way you make eye contact, the way you pause before you speak, the stillness between your sentences, the emotional neutrality you hold when others try to rile you, all of it builds your frame. And when it's strong enough, even your silence becomes heavy. Let them try to test you. Let them throw their frame at you. Opinions, assumptions, projections, accusations. If you react, you've entered their world. But if you stay rooted, still, unbothered, you force them to re-enter yours. The battle is never in the facts. The battle is always in who sets the context. The mistake weak men make is they try to win in someone else's frame. They argue inside a lens they didn't create. It's like trying to win a rigged game. Don't do that. Break the game. Redefine the terms. Shift the ground beneath their feet. Every time they try to pull you into their world, you pull them back into yours, with silence, with a raised eyebrow, with a simple, "I don't see it that way." No need to fight, just stand still. The strongest structure always holds. In relationships, frame is power. The person who needs less controls more. The person who sets the tone emotionally sets the pace of the connection. If you're always explaining yourself, chasing clarity, or reacting to mood swings, you've already lost the frame. But if you remain calm, slightly distant, indifferent to outcomes, you own it. In business, frame defines perception. Confidence is frame. Authority is frame. The way you walk into a negotiation, the way you say no, the way you sit in silence while the other party scrambles to fill it, that's all part of the war. The man with the strongest frame doesn't rush. He doesn't justify. He allows discomfort to hang in the air, because that discomfort is leverage. That pause is dominance. In life, frame is your armor. Without it, you get pulled into every argument, every opinion, every distraction. You lose your sense of mission, of focus, of identity. But with it, you walk through chaos untouched. You see manipulation before it happens. You turn emotional warfare into amusement. You become the calm in the storm, and people follow the calm because they mistake it for clarity. To dominate frame, you must detach from outcome. As soon as you try to win approval, you've handed over control. Your power lies in indifference, not apathy, but discipline. The discipline to remain committed to your lens, even if the world resists. Eventually, the world adapts because people crave stability, and the man who remains still when all others shake becomes their anchor. So stop trying to be right. Start being solid. Speak less, mean more. Control your body language. Control your tone. Be emotionally immune. And when challenged, don't react. Reinforce. Say less. Hold still. Let the weight of your frame collapse theirs. And remember this: the world doesn't believe the best story. It believes the story told with the most certainty. You must become the storyteller who doesn't flinch. The man who sees the world through his own crafted lens and refuses to live inside anyone else's. Comment this below if you're ready to own the lens. My frame is law, and the room adapts to me. Say it, post it, memorize it, because from this point on, you don't enter frames, you create them. Number 8, strategic absence. Vanish to multiply your value. Power isn't just about presence, it's about timed absence, strategic absence, the kind that doesn't signal weakness, but value. You want to become unforgettable? Vanish. You want to become respected? Remove yourself. Because the truth is brutal and simple. What is always available is always undervalued. In a world addicted to attention, the man who disappears is feared. Feared not because he's gone, but because no one knows why. feared because he removed something they assumed they'd always have. Your presence is currency. Your availability is a resource. And when you take that away, suddenly they realize how dependent they were on it. Look around. Most people oversaturate themselves. They're constantly online, constantly responding, constantly explaining, constantly visible. Their presence becomes white noise, predictable, cheap. But when you pull back, deliberately without drama, you become a scarcity, and scarcity is value. This is the principle of psychological supply and demand. If they can reach you whenever they want, you become common. If they have to wait for you, earn your attention, wonder where you've gone, you become rare, and rare things are valuable, powerful, desired. They're remembered. Machiavelli understood this. A prince must be seen, but not too often. He must be present enough to be respected, but absent enough to remain mysterious. The illusion of distance builds prestige. That's why the throne is always elevated, not for safety, but for perspective, to make the ruler visible, but untouchable. You don't increase your value by giving more. You increase it by giving less, at the right time. This is where most men destroy their power. They think consistency means presence, but real consistency lies in discipline, not availability. The discipline to say, not now, not today. You'll hear from me when it serves the mission. Strategic absence applies to every domain. In relationships, vanish when you feel taken for granted. In business, disappear when your value is assumed. In social circles, retreat to become legend. In content, leave the crowd hungry. And here's the twist. Absence isn't about being forgotten. It's about being felt. When you vanish correctly, your silence gets louder. Your absence begins to echo. They hear it in conversations. They notice it in the shift of energy. You become a shadow they miss, a presence they took for granted, now amplified by your distance. But this isn't about ghosting. This isn't passive-aggressive. This is calculated detachment. You disappear not because you're hurt, but because you're focused, you're moving, planning, evolving. You leave the room to build the room you'll later own. And when you return, you're different, sharper, colder, more refined. Now they realize they never had access to the full version of you, only a preview. Absence is also a filter. It exposes what's real. The right people will respect your distance. The wrong ones will resent it, and that tells you everything. If someone only values you when you're constantly available, they don't value you. They value control. Strategic absence reveals their intentions without a word spoken. Your disappearance becomes a mirror. It reflects their expectations back at them. Some will grow quiet, some will lash out, some will chase. Let them. Their reaction reveals their character, and all you did was leave the room. Absence builds anticipation. In a hyper-connected world, the disconnected man becomes an anomaly. He's unpredictable, elusive, and people obsess over what they can't predict. Your vanishing creates tension, curiosity, hunger. Let that hunger build. When you reappear, they'll hang on every word, not because of what you said, but because they remember the silence that came before it. And remember, the longer you stay silent, the louder they think. That's the mind trap. Your absence becomes a blank canvas for their obsession. They project, they theorize, they imagine. And imagination, my friend, is more powerful than explanation. You didn't need to say anything. Your absence said everything. This also applies to your goals, your grind, your vision. Don't announce it. Don't post about it. Disappear into the process. Starve the audience. Let them forget you until they see what you've built. Then reappear, not to explain, but to dominate. Results don't need validation. They speak in silence. You are not obligated to be constantly visible to prove your worth. In fact, the more often you're seen, the more invisible you become. Don't fight for the spotlight. Create mystery. Then, when the moment is right, command the spotlight by how far you've moved in the shadows. Let people ask where you went. Let them wonder why you stopped responding. Let them feel the gap. You don't owe them presence. You owe yourself progress. And the deeper your mission, the less explaining you should do. The more ruthless your ambition, the more solitude you'll require. Strategic absence isn't laziness, it's refinement. It's the difference between noise and resonance, between talking often and being heard when it matters. Some will say you're distant, cold, arrogant. Let them. Those words come from the mouths of people who think they're entitled to your time. But you're not theirs. You never were. You belong to the path now, to the mission. And if that requires distance, so be it. You don't have to respond immediately. You don't have to explain the silence. Sometimes you disappear because your presence is too powerful to be wasted. That's the new mindset. I disappear to become undeniable. I vanish to multiply my value. I retreat to evolve. Comment that below if you're ready to weaponize your absence. My silence builds value. My absence speaks louder than words. Type it, own it, etch it into your discipline. Because in a world addicted to showing up, the man who walks away on purpose becomes unforgettable. Number 9. The untouchable mind. There comes a point in a man's evolution where noise no longer rattles him, betrayal no longer surprises him, and chaos no longer moves him. That point marks the birth of an untouchable mind. A mind that doesn't flinch, doesn't chase, and never bleeds for the undeserving. This is the final tier of power, not wealth, not applause, not conquest, but emotional sovereignty, the ability to sit above the battlefield, untouched by provocation, unmoved by pressure, and unshaken by games. Understand this: the world is an emotional war zone. Most people aren't arguing for truth. They're baiting for reaction. They don't want clarity. They want leverage over your emotions, because once they pull your emotional strings, they control your reality. Most men never learn this. They react when insulted. They explain when misunderstood. They rage when rejected. That's not strength. That's servitude. They're not men. They're reactors. Puppets wearing confidence, easily undone by a word, a look, a delay. But you're here because you refuse to live like that. The untouchable man doesn't participate in emotional theater. He knows the rules of the game and simply chooses not to play. He doesn't suppress emotion. He observes it, studies it, converts it. When anger comes, he doesn't explode. He becomes silent. When fear surfaces, he doesn't run. He calculates. When affection arises, he doesn't worship it. He controls it. Emotion exists, but it is beneath his throne. An untouchable mind isn't numb. It's trained. It feels everything but responds to nothing until it chooses to. It doesn't flinch at chaos. It doesn't fold under pressure. It doesn't seek peace through others. It brings peace into the room and forces others to adjust. People sense it. They can't explain it, but they feel it. The stillness, the restraint, the unshakable calm behind your eyes. That's what separates you from them. That's what makes them fear your silence more than their own words. Machiavelli understood this well. Power is maintained not by reaction, but by mastery over emotion. The prince who controls himself becomes immune to the manipulation of others. If nothing shakes you, no one owns you. That's why emotional sovereignty is so rare and so feared. Because once a man becomes immune to emotional pressure, there is no way to control him. He can't be seduced by praise. He can't be tamed by guilt. He can't be provoked by insult. He becomes untouchable, not because he avoids war, but because he wins without firing a shot. People fear what they can't read, and the untouchable mind is unreadable. It gives nothing away. You don't respond to passive aggression. You don't answer to bait. You don't correct every misunderstanding. You let your silence do what your words never could. Shift the frame entirely. That's why your absence becomes louder than their noise. That's why your indifference terrifies them more than anger ever could. Because now they have no script. They can't provoke you. They can't predict you. They can't reach you. Let them argue. Let them perform. Let them collapse under their own emotional noise. You sit high above the battlefield, watching, thinking, deciding. You speak only when it serves the outcome. You strike only when it's undeniably effective. You've abandoned the need to be understood. You've killed the urge to explain. You've stopped performing for emotional approval. Your validation now comes from one place: discipline. And here's what they'll never admit. Your calm is more threatening than their chaos. Your restraint burns hotter than their rage. Your ability to disappear, detach, and delay destroys their rhythm. They wanted reaction. They got calculation. They wanted war. You gave them emptiness. And in that silence, they unravel. The untouchable mind doesn't ask for peace. It commands it. You enter a room, and your energy shifts the dynamics. People become more cautious, more intentional. They measure their words around you, not because you threatened them, but because they know you're not like the rest. You're not emotional real estate for rent. You're sovereign ground, and the price to access your inner world is no longer cheap. Emotionally weak men need others to understand their pain. They scream it, post it, dump it into every conversation. But you've gone internal. Your war is private. Your suffering is sacred. You bleed in silence, rebuild in darkness, and emerge sharper, colder, more lethal. Your peace is not accidental. It's earned through emotional warfare, and the victory was won by standing still while everything around you burned. Let them call you cold. Let them say you've changed. Let them whisper that you're distant, detached, unreachable. Good. Let them speak, because you didn't come this far to be liked. You came here to rule yourself, and from that position, the world follows. You've removed the buttons they use to push. You've disconnected the wires they use to pull. You've trained yourself to remain composed in the face of chaos, indifferent in the face of guilt, and motionless in the presence of emotional storms. That is not detachment, that is ascension. The world will try to drag you back down, into noise, into drama, into softness. Stay above it, stay cold, stay clean. Your mission is not to be understood, it's to become unshakable. You are the eye of the storm, the man they can't predict, the presence they can't ignore, the standard they can't reach. Say this aloud and type it below if you're stepping into full sovereignty. My mind is mine, my emotions serve me, I am untouchable. Post it, own it, live it. Let it become your mental armor, because you've reached the end of this journey, not as a follower of rules, but as a master of self. You've learned to respond, not react, to hold the frame, to disappear when it sharpens your power, to control the lens, to weaponize your silence, to starve the world of access to you until it earns it. And now, you don't just think differently, you exist differently. You've crossed into rare territory, the realm of men who do not bend. You've become the quiet force, the steady threat, the final voice in every room. You are now untouchable. If this series reshaped your perspective, if it made you dangerous, if it triggered the shift, then do this. Like the video, subscribe to Psyche, turn on notifications, because what's coming next isn't for the comfortable. It's for the cold, focused, emotionally dominant few. The world doesn't need more noise. It needs more stillness with fire behind it. And now, that's you.